everywhere I've seen where there's an event where there are property investors, you always avail yourself to add value. Why is that?
Sure, I enjoy it. I think I enjoy sharing. I enjoy taking what I know and imparting it. I'm not necessarily a massive expert in anything, but I know a lot. But more so, I enjoy the feedback, the questions, the discussions, because I learn from them. There are very few times when I've gone to and been in a space with people where I was, where I was the cleverest in the room, because I got clever questions that made me think. I have a view. I have enough experience and knowledge to provide a view on most things, but sometimes the way a question is asked gives me a different perspective, and I think about that. I think about how that applies to me in my business, in my portfolio, in my strategies, and then take it from there. So I go into rooms, I give them myself, but actually to get the value back as well.
Tell me more about your background and your upbringing. What was that like?
Sure. Born in Hillbrow in Johannesburg. My parents are both Portuguese from Mozambique.
Hey, vertel português.
Falo português. So grew up in Johannesburg.
Did they have shops?
No, they didn't have shops. My dad was a financial advisor.
Yeah.
My mom worked at the bank for a while as a branch teller. So it's a very kind of normal type of family. We didn't have shops. I'm now married to a beautiful Portuguese woman as well, who now in her family now it's shops and farms and that kind of thing. So and all the rest. So I've now brought that into my family.
Yeah, so now you are a proper Portuguese.
Yes, definitely. I'm proper Portuguese.
Continue, yeah.
Just so it's myself and my brother and my sister, and we grew up in Johannesburg. Nothing really to shout about. My father dabbled in a bit of property renovations, etc., on the side, so I had a bit of that exposure early on. But it was, and when I was studying, I developed or just created a courier business. I used to courier UNISA assignments for students. Before we had email and all those things, we used to have post boxes around Gauteng, and I had a driver and a car, and every day we would do probably about 160 kilometers just driving, picking up assignments and taking them through to UNISA in Pretoria. That was my first entrepreneurial type of business. I then started working at ABSA. I wasn't doing very well. So it was successful, but I wasn't making any money, so it wasn't successful.
So your first job was ABSA? My
first job was ABSA. I started ABSA as a graduate trainee, right at the bottom. You go into ABSA. I think they still have them today. It's a 2 or 3 year program, and they put you around.
Where had you studied? Where had you studied?
I studied at UNISA.
Oh, you did UNISA?
I did UNISA.
Well, that's how you knew how to drop the assignments.
I understood the problem because I was the one, going in at kind of 11 p.m. at night into Joburg to the UNISA box. And I thought, geez, there's got to be a better way than doing this. And I knew other people who were doing the same. And I saw the problem, had an idea about the solution, went and pitched the idea to UNISA. I think I was 19 at the time. They said, go ahead, we can't help you, but we're not going to stop you. Go ahead.
Did you make money?
No, I didn't. I underpriced myself. Okay. I didn't realize the value of I didn't realize the value of what I was offering. And actually, my ticket prices were too low. But the two people I had on board was UNISA and Engen Garages. Engen, we got an agreement with Engen at the time to actually put these post boxes because they were open 24 hours and they could sell these little postage stamps. And at 19, you're having these big conversations. It just tells you that actually, if I can do this, what else can I do? You start to work through some of those mental models or barriers that we tend to have. So I started off at ABSA, and I think at about that time I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. There were two books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Nedbank. I think it was Nedbank had a book out on financial management. The banks used to give out these books, but it was like a proper book. And there was a whole chapter on property finance, property investment. And that, together with Rich Dad Poor Dad, I started thinking, there's something in it. And I bought my first property in my second year of work.
Your first property, was that were you investing or?
I was investing. So I was renting, and I was renting for myself, and I bought this property to rent out, a little 1-bedroom property.
And you continued to rent where you were staying?
I continued to rent. Yeah. It was the apartment I rented in Melville was a lovely apartment. It was big and was for cheaper than what I'll be able to buy for.
Yeah.
So it actually made sense for me to rent at the time, and I also realized that people want to move into their own property. They want to be in their own space, and I realized actually a good space doesn't have to be my own space.
What's the philosophy around that? A good space doesn't have to be my own space. I believe the same, but I just want to hear what your philosophy around it is.
So I think it means different things at different times in your life. So at the time, of course, I was single. I was, young professional. I was mobile, so it didn't really mind. I needed to be in a space that I'd enjoy. It didn't have to be mine. Fast forward, probably 15 years later, I was married. We're talking about kids on the way, and then it was important for me to live in my own place. So I think it's largely an emotional decision.
It sounds emotional,
and it talks to you where you are in your life, in your life stage, and what your needs are.
Yeah, but if you were to do it again, knowing what you know about property investing now, because you said you worked 15 years, and on the 15th year you met your wife, and she said buy a home, right? Knowing what you know now, would you have still committed so much money to a primary home, or would you have continued with your strategy of, I can provide you with the best place for you to live, we don't have to own it, let's continue investing in property?
Sure, it's easy to do this in retrospect. I think if I was committed to building a property portfolio in the right way, we would probably still be renting